Your desires are not accidents. They are not random sparks that come and go without meaning. Every fantasy, every attraction, every image that lingers in your imagination carries a secret message. And if you listen closely, those messages are not about the people or situations you dream of. They are about you. They are encrypted fragments of your unconscious, whispers from the parts of yourself you've tried to bury, but that always find a way to surface. Carl Jung believed that sexuality was not just about pleasure. To him, desire was symbolic, a language spoken by the psyche itself. What excites you, unsettles you, or even embarrasses you does not arise by chance. It arises because your unconscious is trying to tell you something about who you really are. Think about that for a moment. The things you keep hidden under the sheets may reveal more about your identity than anything you post on social media, more than the mask you show to your family, and even more than what you admit to yourself in the mirror. This is what makes Jung's view so unsettling, and at the same time, so powerful. Because if your fantasies are not random, then they are a kind of map. They are not simply whims or curiosities. They are doors to your shadow. They reflect your fears, your wounds, your longings, and perhaps even the parts of your personality that you have never had the courage to accept. In that sense, desire is not something to be dismissed or repressed. It is a compass that can guide you to the deepest truths of who you are. And here is where it becomes uncomfortable. The unconscious does not care about the stories you tell other people. It doesn't care about the moral rules you cling to, the traditions you follow, or the image you carefully build to appear controlled and acceptable. Desire cuts through all of that. It speaks in symbols. It expresses itself in impulses you cannot fully control. And it does so with a brutal honesty that your conscious mind often cannot handle. Ask yourself, what if your desires are not just private indulgences, but reflections of your inner biography? What if every fantasy you've had is a page from the diary of your unconscious? Would you be willing to read it? In this video, we will follow Jung's path into the psychology of sexual desire. Together, we will explore how fantasies reveal your hidden shadow, how they connect to ancient archetypes, and how they might even point to your future. The only question is, are you ready to listen to what your shadow has been trying to tell you? Carl Jung believed that desire is never innocent. What excites you is not a coincidence, and it is certainly not meaningless. It is a message, a coded signal from the unconscious. When you feel drawn towards something, whether it is a person, a fantasy, or even a forbidden image that unsettles you, Jung would say that this attraction is the voice of your shadow speaking. The shadow is the hidden part of your personality, the part you deny or repress, the part you rarely show the world, and often, not even yourself. Take, for example, the person who feels an overwhelming pull toward the forbidden. At first glance, you might think this is just about rebellion or lust, but Jung saw something deeper. The attraction to the taboo often belongs to someone whose life is rigidly controlled by rules, responsibilities, or strict morality. In such a life, desire becomes the only escape, the only place where freedom is allowed to exist. To crave the forbidden, then, is not just to seek thrill. It is the psyche's way of reminding you of everything you have locked away in chains. Now consider another case. The person who insists on having total control and intimacy. On the surface, it may look like a hunger for power, but Jung would say it often reveals the opposite. In everyday life, this person may feel powerless, fragile, or overwhelmed by circumstances they cannot control. Their fantasy of domination becomes a stage where they can reclaim the strength that reality has taken from them. Desire, in this sense, is not indulgence. It is compensation, a balancing act performed by the unconscious. The reverse is just as revealing. Someone who longs to be dominated, to surrender entirely, is not simply seeking weakness. They are often the ones who, in daily life, carry heavy burdens. They are the responsible ones, the decision makers, the people who always have to hold the world together. For them, desire becomes a temporary release. It is not about losing dignity, it is about finding rest. In intimacy, they finally allow themselves to set down the weight they are forced to carry every other moment of their lives. Oh, you see the pattern? What excites you in private is not random. It is symbolic. It is your body expressing what your conscious mind represses. Jung's radical insight was that the truth of your life is written into your desires. And if you dare to interpret them, you will discover that desire is not a distraction from who you are. It is the most honest reflection of it. If Jung was right, then every sexual impulse is a symbol. It's not the act itself that matters most, but the psychological story it tells. Desire is like a mirror that reflects not just what you want, but the hidden biography of your emotions, the history of your wounds, and the shape of your longings. In other words, your fantasies are not random entertainment for the mind. They are coded messages from your unconscious, written in the language of symbolism. Think of the person who feels irresistibly drawn to what is forbidden, the taboo, the off-limits. Jung would say that this is not just thrill-seeking. It is the shadow, the repressed part of the psyche, breaking free from chains of strict morality. The tighter the conscious mind clings to rules and restrictions, the stronger the unconscious demands freedom. Desire, in this sense, is not dangerous rebellion. It is a cry for balance. Now imagine someone whose fantasies revolve around pain, marks, or scars on the body. At first glance, this looks like nothing more than masochism, a taste for extremes. But Jung would see it differently. For him, the body becomes a canvas, a place where invisible wounds can finally take form. Those scars are not just marks of play, they are confessions. They are the psyche's brutal way of saying, "Here I am. This is my suffering. See it, touch it, acknowledge it." Desire, here, becomes testimony, a way for the unconscious to speak in the rawest language it knows. On the other side, there are those who fantasize about inflicting pain, about dominating completely. Again, it may look like cruelty, but Jung suggested that it often hides a history of powerlessness. The unconscious seeks to reclaim what was taken away, to rehearse the feeling of strength that reality has denied. The pleasure is not in hurting another. It is in experiencing, at last, the illusion of being invulnerable. And then there are the ones who dream of multiplicity, of many lovers, many partners, endless variety. It might appear as simple promiscuity, but Jung would point to something deeper. These are souls who feel fragmented, incomplete, not enough as they are. Their desire for many is symbolic, an unconscious attempt to gather all the missing pieces of themselves into a single sense of wholeness. Even the most tender desires carry hidden stories. The person who longs for endless softness, for caresses and surrender, may not be chasing romance alone. Often, they are trying to heal a past marked by emotional deprivation, a childhood starved of warmth and care. In intimacy, they search for what they never received: validation, affection, the gentle assurance that they are worthy of love. This is the deeper truth Jung uncovered. Sexuality is not just about the body. It is about the soul. Your desires are metaphors, a symbolic autobiography written in flesh and feeling. And when you learn to read them, you are not simply decoding fantasies. You are reading the story of who you are. Up until now, we've been looking at desire as something personal, a reflection of your wounds, your shadow, and your hidden emotions. But Jung went further. He argued that our fantasies are not only personal symbols, but also collective ones. They tap into what he called the archetypes, ancient, universal patterns of human experience that live deep in the collective unconscious. This means that the things you crave in intimacy are not just about you. They are echoes of symbols that humanity has carried for centuries. Think of the attraction to authority figures, the teacher, the boss, the leader. On the surface, it looks like nothing more than a power dynamic, a desire shaped by hierarchy. But Jung would say that beneath this attraction is the archetype of the father, the guardian, the ruler. To long for intimacy with authority is to replay your relationship with power itself, whether that means respect, fear, or rebellion. Your desire becomes a way of negotiating the role authority plays in your life. Now consider the opposite. Fantasies about vulnerable or innocent figures, those who need guidance or protection. At first glance, this looks like tenderness, the instinct to care for another. But psychologically, it carries the archetype of the savior. The unconscious is not simply seeking romance. It is trying to embody the role of protector, to feel needed, to give what once could not be given in reality. In that moment, desire becomes a symbolic attempt to heal the past by stepping into the role of rescuer. Masks, strangers, uniforms, these too are archetypal. Why do so many find mystery itself attractive? Jung would say that this is the archetype of the shadow in its purest form. The unknown seduces us because it reflects what we deny in ourselves. When we are drawn to the hidden, we are really drawn to our own hidden depths. The mask others wear becomes a mirror for the mask we wear internally. And perhaps the most profound of all is the archetype of union, what Jung described as the anima and the animus. The inner feminine within the man and the inner masculine within the woman. When you feel an inexplicable pull towards someone who awakens more than just physical attraction, Jung would say that your unconscious is reaching for completion. That desire is not a bridge toward the other person. It is a bridge toward the missing part of yourself. This is the unsettling truth. What excites you is not just about your past and not just about your individuality. It connects you to something much older, much larger, something universal. Your private fantasies carry within them the echoes of the human story itself. So far, we've seen how desire exposes your shadow and how it connects to the timeless symbols of the collective unconscious. But Jung took it even further. He believed that desire does not only point backward to your past wounds and repressions. It also points forward. Desire, he argued, has a perspective function. It reveals what is coming next in your psychological development, like a compass pointing you toward the person you are meant to become. Think of someone who repeatedly fantasizes about being watched, of being at the center of attention in their most intimate moments. At first glance, it looks like exhibitionism, a hunger for thrill. But Jung would ask, what does this say about their future? Perhaps it signals that deep down, they are preparing to step out of anonymity. The unconscious is pushing them toward recognition, urging them to claim their voice and step into visibility. The fantasy becomes a rehearsal for a life change that has not yet arrived, on the other hand. Consider the one who fantasizes about hiding, about vanishing into the shadows, about being invisible even in intimacy. To many, this seems like nothing more than shyness or avoidance. But for Jung, it could be a sign that the person's conscious life is tipping into overexposure. Maybe they are already carrying too much attention, too many expectations, too much pressure to be seen. Their unconscious whispers of retreat, rehearsing a future where silence and withdrawal are necessary for survival. This is what makes desire so profound. It is not only an echo of who you have been, it is also a signal of who you are becoming. Your fantasies are not just random indulgences. They are psychic forecasts, sketches of the transformations waiting ahead. The attraction you feel today may be the missing link between the life you are living and the life you are destined to live, if you have the courage to follow it. And here lies the challenge. Can you look at your desires not as guilty secrets, but as guides? Can you see them as messages written in symbolic language, urging you to move toward wholeness? Jung believed that when you take your fantasies seriously, you begin to understand that the unconscious is not trying to sabotage you. It is trying to guide you. Desire becomes a compass, one that never lies. If desire is a compass, then it is also a teacher. Jung insisted that the unconscious does not send us messages to torment us, but to guide us toward growth. Yet most people do not listen. They repress their fantasies, bury them in shame, or label them as dangerous, dirty, or wrong. In doing so, they create monsters. What is ignored in silence grows stronger in silence. This is why many people feel consumed by urges they cannot explain, because they have refused to interpret them. But what happens if we do the opposite? What if we face our fantasies instead of running from them? Jung argued that when we learn to interpret our desires symbolically, they become tools of transformation. Your fantasies are not enemies. They are disguised teachers, mirrors showing you the lessons you most need to learn. Think about it. How many times have you felt guilty about the images that flash through your mind? How many times have you judged yourself for what excites you? Jung would say that guilt blinds you to the truth. The real question is not what's wrong with me, but what is this desire trying to teach me? Take the example of someone who longs to surrender, to be entirely passive. If they repress this fantasy, they may shame themselves into silence. But if they interpret it, they may realize that their daily life is burdened by constant responsibility, by always being the one in charge. The fantasy then is not corruption, but a message, a cry for rest, a longing for relief. The unconscious is showing them the balance they need, or consider the person whose fantasies seem dark, even disturbing. They might fear these desires as proof that something is broken inside them. But Jung would remind us that the unconscious always speaks in symbols. Darkness is rarely literal, it is symbolic. What looks like cruelty may really be the psyche's attempt to reclaim lost strength. What looks like shameful excess may really be a search for missing wholeness. The greatest risk is not having fantasies that unsettle you. The greatest risk is refusing to explore them. Because when you do, you discover that desire is not a curse. It is therapy. Every image, every impulse, every craving is an invitation to confront the shadow, and in doing so, to heal. Attraction, then, is not an enemy. It is a guide in disguise. What seduces you in intimacy is really your psyche trying to show you what you have ignored for too long. Jung's message was simple but radical. The path to self-knowledge runs directly through the heart of your desires. Now we arrive at the most uncomfortable, but also the most liberating part of this journey. If everything we've explored is true, if your desires reflect your shadow, if they carry archetypal weight, if they act as a compass and even as therapy, then you cannot dismiss them as meaningless impulses anymore. You must face them. And in doing so, you face yourself. Your sexual desires are the most sincere X-ray of your identity. They reveal truths that you cannot edit, cannot disguise, cannot hide behind filters or words. Unlike the stories you tell other people, unlike the image you carefully present to the world, desire does not lie. It speaks directly, raw and unfiltered, cutting past your masks and touching the core of who you are. And here lies the paradox. Most people live polished lives. They strive to appear controlled, proper, acceptable. They post curated images. They use careful language. They follow rules of morality or tradition. But beneath that thin layer of order burns a fire. Intimacy, fantasy, the private theater of desire. This is where the unconscious breaks through. And no matter how many layers you stack on top of it, it always finds a way to leak out. Jung's challenge to us is not to suppress that fire, but to learn from it. To treat every impulse, every craving, every fantasy as a clue to our own psychological truth. When you see desire this way, it stops being shameful. It becomes symbolic. It becomes a mirror. And suddenly, instead of running from your fantasies, you can walk toward them with curiosity. You can ask, what is this really showing me? What does my unconscious want me to see? Think of the power in that. Imagine no longer being at war with your desires, but learning from them. Instead of guilt, you feel recognition. Instead of repression, you feel integration. The energy you once wasted in denial can now be transformed into growth. You begin to see that your unconscious has never been your enemy. It has always been your most honest guide, but the choice is yours. You can keep pretending that your fantasies are meaningless, keep denying what they reveal about you, and keep fighting the very truths that could set you free. Or you can choose the harder path, to accept them, to integrate them, and to let them transform your life. Jung would remind us that transformation is never comfortable. It is always unsettling, because when you look your shadow in the eye, you are never the same again. So here is my challenge to you. If you've come this far, it means something inside you is searching for answers. Write this phrase in the comments. My desire is my truth. It will be our secret code, proof that you are not afraid to look into the mirror of the unconscious. And as you leave this video, remember this: desire is not an enemy. It is the key that unlocks the cell where you've been imprisoned by fear, repression, and denial. Use it, open the door, and step into the freedom of knowing yourself fully and unapologetically. Because once you listen to your shadow, once you accept what it has been trying to tell you, there is no turning back.